Hi, this is Rachel from the Book Mavens, and I wanted to do a June wrap-up review for you. You already saw the majority of the books that I had read in June. When I was in Greece, I tried to do a quick little review, especially concerning all of like the Hades and Persephone and Greek mythology inspired books that I had chosen for my trip. The only book that I was not able to complete while in Greece, I actually started it on the airplane on the way home, was The North Wind. So I wanted to talk about this one and 4 others that I was able to finish before the month was over. So let's talk about The North Wind. So this is by Alexandria Warwick, and this is kind of a Hades and Persephone retelling. The land is like everything's frozen, and it centers around where you have these 4 winds, and they have their own kind of territories. And the North Wind, he's become really, really powerful, and his powers are leaching into other areas, specifically spring. So one of the winds that's associated with spring is a character in this book as well. But when they talk about Greek mythology, I think it's very interesting. It's not necessarily talking about like the Olympian gods. It's talking about more the Titans. So this idea that these winds are older than the Olympian gods, and that one of the reasons why they're so limited and they have territories is because they fought alongside the Olympians to overthrow the Titans. So they're older gods than the Olympians. So I have a hard time this is the inner historian coming out, classifying this as a Hades and Persephone retelling, because if you look at it like in terms of events happening, then it would place kind of one of our main characters' origins as being far older than Hades. So, the timeline's a little wonky in terms of historical relevance with classic Greek mythology, but that's beside the point. Anyway, so we have this idea that this small town, every so many years, I think it's like 30 years? I forget the time. It doesn't really matter. He comes in and he takes a wife, and these human women that he takes as a spouse, they're necessary to kind of guard against these dark walkers, which are like malevolent spirits. I don't know. It's very I wouldn't say that the world building is extremely cut and dry in the story. There's a lot of kind of things that happen that aren't explained very well. I will say overall, there's not a lot of like Persephone aspects. He takes a wife from this village. It wasn't the woman that he had chosen. It's actually her sister, who's scarred and who's a hunter and who's lived this very hard life. She's an alcoholic, and I like how they handled addiction in here. That's one of the things that was done really well. And she's trying to save her sister, and so it's good. It reminds me a little bit more of like something you would see with A Court of Thorns and Roses, so a little bit more Beauty and the Beast than I would say like a classical Greek mythology story. It's a hodgepodge of a lot of things. And anyway, but in terms of the length, to me it runs a little long. It is a slow burn, kind of enemies to lovers situation going on. But when we're talking about the lovers aspect, we're talking like maybe this much of the book. The rest of it is a lot of hate. They really, really hate each other. So it's a true enemies to lovers story. I like the female characterization. I like him as well. Boreas, I think is his name. 'Cause he's the North Wind. And it's very heavily detailed. It's an interesting story. It develops elements of like kind of a grumpy sunshine trope to some degree, even though she's not really Miss Sunshine herself, but he's very grumpy. So yeah, so there's some interesting elements. I would not say that this is my favorite kind of Hades and Persephone inspired story. It didn't come across clear enough for me. It's a little muddled at times. Things aren't explained fully. People's intentions aren't explained fully. We don't really know why people do what they do. It's just not developed enough for me, and for the length that it is, there's certainly enough pages to be able to have done that well. So it's to me, this it needed a better editing job. But I mean, overall, I enjoyed it. Would I pick it up again? Probably not, because there are other books that I would go to before picking it up again. But I'm happy I read it. It was fine. It was a good read. I would give it like a middle of the road, like maybe like a 3 stars, 3.5 maybe. But if you've read it and you have a different opinion, I'd love to hear about it. Yeah, so like a 3 star. It's just okay. It was okay. And then I read 2 other books digitally. I read the new Raven Kennedy book, Glow, which is the next book, is the 4th book of the Plated Prisoner series, which I really enjoyed, but I'm heavily invested in that storyline, so you guys already know that. I didn't think it was as good as the 3rd book. I thought the 3rd book, there was just so many revelations, that it was really, really strong. This 4th book, Glow, ends on a huge cliffhanger, so if you've been reading them, you're gonna have a long ways to go, I think, before the next one comes out. So one of the joys of reading a continuing series, I totally understand why people choose to wait until the series is completed. You don't want to wait around for 1.5 years to find out how things end. So if you've been kind of on the fence about it, you might want to wait until she wraps up the series, because this isn't the only cliffhanger book of this series, but this ends up on a big one. This one is very political. It focuses a lot more on Slade's background, which is interesting. You get to find out more about how his power works and some possibilities regarding Arren's power in terms of her gold touch and what she's really capable of. It's very interesting. You get to see their relationship kind of grow and expand more. I really felt that the majority of character development happened with Slade over Arren. I felt like her big breakthrough book was definitely the 3rd one. So that's just my... actually, I think more of the 2nd one, and the 3rd one is her kind of coming into her own, which is really great. Anyway, but that series, that's a Midas retelling, so the man who could turn things into gold with his touch, and it is definitely a retelling with a twist. So I do really enjoy it. I do think it's very creative. I think the world building is really strong. I like it a lot. Let's see. And then the other book that I read digitally, I read Stalking Jack the Ripper by Carrie Menescalco. I had been kind of putting off this series. There's 4 books, and they all deal with, I think, like different kind of more like Penny Dreadful. If you're familiar with that series or familiar with the Penny Dreadful concept in terms of like the serial, I think there were like short stories that were published around the turn of the century. So we were dealing with like Dracula, and I think there's one about Houdini, and then there's one with like the devil, but I don't know if it means like the literal devil. I'm not really sure. But Stalking Jack the Ripper obviously is dealing, if they're historical fiction, they're not fantastical really. Carrie Menescalco takes a lot of liberties when it comes to how she involves the Ripper case in her overall story. Very creative liberties. As somebody who has read up quite a bit about the Ripper case, I teach psychology. I've definitely studied the Ripper case. I've read several books about it. A lot of creative liberties. But the biggest stretch I had for them is the believability of this teenage girl, Audrey Rose is our main character, that she's consulting on the Jack the Ripper case. Girlfriend is not an expert. I found that a little hard to believe, like above and beyond. I found her male counterpart to be far more believable in terms of him being an actual student, where she's kind of like a somewhat student because her uncle's this famous kind of forensic scientist guy, mortician. And, you know, she likes to study dead bodies. That's great, but that doesn't make her an expert. But her male counterpart has some kind of Sherlock Holmes qualities that I found to be enjoyable to read. I don't really think she brought very much to the table as a character. I'm definitely going to continue. There's enough going on where I kind of want to see where it's going to end up. If there's going to be some kind of actual conclusion, it'll be interesting. The twists and turns weren't very twisty or turny. It was pretty predictable, but that's okay as long as it's written well. Carrie Menescalco's other series, Kingdom of the Wicked, we also have kind of this mystery happening where we have this young girl who's also trying to solve it, but it made more sense because it was her sister So she's like personally involved, whereas our character in Stalking Jack the Ripper is not personally involved. She's like an upper class girl from a titled family in England. It doesn't make any sense that she would take such a personal interest in the Jack the Ripper slaying. So, like I said, there's a lot you have to kind of suspend in terms of believability. I found her to be quite annoying as a character overall, especially the ending. I couldn't believe it. In terms of how she behaved, wow. But like I said, I'm going to continue. I'm going to try and give another one a shot and see how I feel about it. I feel like there's enough going on with the male character that I kind of want to see that play out. I like their interactions together. I just didn't find her contribution to the case to be believable. So I would give it maybe like a 2.5 star. It was okay, but it's leaning more towards that it really wasn't that great side. So I enjoyed Kingdom of the Wicked and Kingdom of the Cursed more than this book. So we'll see. I don't want to give up on her. But I'll pick those up again at some point. I'm not in any major rush. So the last 2 books that I read this tail end of June was Daughter of the Pirate King and Daughter of the Siren Queen. And these were super fun. So any of you who really like pirate books, very Pirates of the Caribbean, swashbuckling, there's quite a bit of violence, I will say. There's a romance, but it is very like level 1. There's no sex. Like not even close. Kissing. So if you're looking for something that's more on the adult side, no, these are very YA to me, except for like the level of violence, because they're pretty violent. I thought it was a really cute story. I like this idea of this girl who has some fantastical abilities, who's leading a crew of almost all women pirates, and I just found the whole concept to be very interesting. I found the connection with the first to the second book very smooth. I thought these were really well thought out books, and I really enjoyed these. I would probably rate these like a 4-star. I sometimes have a hard time with YA. I'm in my 30s. It just gets a little too trite, maybe. I don't know if that's the right word. Just a little, where I'm looking for some more adult interaction. So, yeah, these are very YA, but they're very, very cute. They're very fast reads. You can finish these each in like a day if you're dedicated. They're fast reads. They're not overly complex. The world building is definitely done on a small scale. You're on a boat around islands. There really wasn't a whole lot put into developing kind of an overall world, which I thought was fine. This is very character driven. So a lot of action. You don't have to think about these too hard. It is fantasy. You don't have to worry about so much of the suspension of reality. They're just a lot of fun. So I do recommend these. I think these are great summer reads. Like if you're just going for a long weekend somewhere, pack these books because these are super fun and these are great books to read on the beach. So that rounds out the rest of my June reads. I wanted to kind of fill you in with what my plans are for what I'm going to be reading in July. So if you watched Amanda and I's video that we just shot together, you know that we're reading Naomi Novik's Timirar series. The first book, which I've started, is not very long. So I haven't actually seen them physically. I'm reading the first one digitally. I do have all 9 books coming, but they haven't gotten here yet. So I haven't actually been able to see the lengths. But they're very digestible, or at least so far, if they kind of stick with what the first book is. So I should have more time to be able to read other books. And so I'm going to be completing Joe Abercrombie's First Law trilogy. So I'm like a quarter of the way into Before They Are Hanged. So I'm going to finish this up and The Last Argument of Kings, so I can kind of scratch off this trilogy from my TBR and have it completed. I'm looking forward to it. I do really enjoy them. They're just very dense. And so I haven't picked this one up since the beginning of June, since before I went to Greece. So yes, so the goal is to finish this series by the end of July. And then I have 2 other books that I wanted to tackle. I really want to read John Gwynn's The Shadow of the Gods, and I have The Hunger of the Gods, which this just released, so I'm kind of counting this as kind of a new release, even though I hadn't read the first one yet. I've heard really, really good things about this series. He has some other series, things like Malice or something or other, as well. I haven't read anything by John Gwynne, but I've heard that there's a great kind of like Viking inspo. There's a great female character named Orca that I've been told that I'll really like. So I'm very much looking forward to those. So those are kind of my 4 tentative side reads for the month of July. So anyway, let me know in the comments if any of these books interest you, or you've read them and you want to give me your own quick review and let me know what you thought. I'd love to know. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.